Like to continue, so please take your seats. I know these after-lunch sessions are very difficult for everybody, including myself, but I hope none of us will fall asleep. Okay, so I will continue with the description of we call it component 3 in the project, but this part of the project focused on raising awareness and communication with stakeholders. And the main goal was to raise awareness on importance and value of Armenian biodiversity and prepare tools for the ministry to communicate effectively with the various stakeholders. And there were several key outputs like project website, Facebook, some seminars, study tours to Czech Republic and Finland, and development of communication strategy for the ministry, and then the final brochure about the biodiversity in Armenia. So I think some of you are familiar with the project website, biodiversity.am, where is the project description, information about the partner organizations, and also there is a section downloads where we put all the information, all the presentations that we have here today and that we had also during the previous meetings. So you can find it there and download it. We also presented there several successful case studies on biodiversity conservation from Finland, Czech Republic, and also Armenia. So this is also a kind of interesting source of information. And you can find videos with some of the key actors of biodiversity conservation in Armenia. So you can find it also on that website. And together with the website, we created a Facebook where we informed about coming activities and about some findings during the project. But of course, the Facebook has its limitations, and we will use it in the future probably only occasionally. What I think is the important outcome of this project is Natura 2000 toolkit. And as you heard, Natura 2000 consists of these two directives that are in Europe, the bird directives and habitats directive. And in this toolkit, it is described what these directives are about, how they form the Natura 2000 network. And there is also a description of SIPA, Comprehensive and Enhanced Partnership Agreement between Armenia and European Union. So you can also get the information about SIPA from this Natura 2000 toolkit. And as I said, there are the main principles of EU directives described. Then we add a section on legislation on nature conservation that is in place in the Czech Republic and in Finland, so you can compare the situation between these two countries and Armenia. There are the case studies. There are a couple more case studies than are on the web page that I described earlier. And then one of the major outputs of our project was to development of communication strategy for the ministry. And the main goal of the strategy is to explain the needs and advantages of the changes that we are discussing here today. We used our knowledge, our best practice or experience from the Czech Republic in terms of communication with the public. So we tried to transfer our knowledge into this communication strategy. And we stressed importance of having like two-sided communication, internal communication within the ministry and between the ministry and SNCOs is very important in order to inform the government employees about what's going on, because it's very important that every employee knows what are the obligations and what are the plans of the ministry in biodiversity conservation. So this is one side of this strategy. We recommended several things that should be put in place. Like one easy thing is to produce an information bulletin that would be electronic, but it would be used for inform the employees of the ministry and SNCOs, and some other things. And then external objectives. With the new legislation, it is important to inform about the need for such changes and inform the key stakeholder groups that are also described in the strategy that we see are the priority in communication. The general rule for communicating with the public is to be transparent, to don't hide anything, just really say how the situation is. Have consistency, like it's always important that the ministry informs in one way and continues this way, that it does not change its opinion with the new, well, we discussed it previously with the new minister, for example, but it is important that the information that is going out of the ministry is consistent, that the ministry knows what to do and why it does and why it does. And then it's always good to use factual communication, to use data, numbers, information that are valid. Then we found quite an important thing that the ministry has quite clear corporate identity, like using how to use the logo, what type of characters in written text should be used. So anything that is produced by the ministry, people immediately know that this is the ministry information, that this is the text or anything, video, for example, that has the ministerial stamp behind it. And then we discuss here the communication with hunters, for example. And this is also a tricky thing, that it is important to choose an appropriate channel and language for the stakeholder group. So you will use different type of language when talking to community, different type of language when talking to NGOs, for example, to schools. That there is no such way of communicating that one size fits all. There is always a need to target your information using the appropriate words that type of stakeholder group is using, and so on. So this is also described in the communication strategy. And we already discussed it. If there will be changes in legislation, it is important to really inform the stakeholder groups that will be affected by the legislation ahead of time, not after the legislation is passed, but it is important to communicate with such stakeholder groups even before. Get them ready that something is coming, and you can always have them as an opinion group, and you can get their opinions before, not after an issue or problem will arise. So this is very briefly about what the communication strategy is about, and then I'm going to describe what else we have done under this component 3. We organized 10 seminars in all 10 Armenian provinces, where we informed about the proposed legislation and institutional changes. The participants were from the Ministry of Environment, and Tatevik Zuerker is here. It was very valuable that she could travel with us. Then we had always the regional representatives of the regional authorities, also NGOs, representatives of local communities, farmers, and I think in all cases people from the regional branches of environmental inspectorates were participating in those meetings. Then last March, there is a wrong date, that should be March 22. We organized a seminar at the Armenian Parliament about the SIPA, and with special focus on nature conservation. So we tried to explain what SIPA means for Armenia, and especially we focused on nature conservation issue there. We brought 2 Czech senators to the Czech Parliament, so they could share their experience with applying those EU directives on nature conservation. And I think it was quite valuable with participation of members of parliament and their assistants as well. So we tried to spread the word a bit about these concepts also among these politicians. Then, and I value this personally very high, we organized 4 study tours to Czech Republic and 2 study tours to Finland. And we, from the beginning of the project, we thought it is important to build interpersonal relationships. We need to invest also in people, show them how the nature conservation works in the European Union, in Finland or Czech Republic. And we brought about, I think in total, there were about 30 people from the ministry, from SNCOs, from NGOs that visited our countries. And I hope it was valuable for them. From the feedback we got, it seems that it worked quite well. And the brochure about the biodiversity in Armenia, you received a copy. There are some more, so anyone who is interested to get more copies, you are welcome. And we tried to put an essence of the biodiversity importance in Armenia into this book, and we also summarized our proposals, what we see as a future steps in changing the legislation or changing the institutional setup. So this is published in this brochure, and well, the brochure will be available at the Ministry of Environment. We will give them several copies. And I would end here and ask you for any comments or questions that you would have to communication with public. Thank you for attention. So no questions? Is there any participant of these study trips who would like to express his or her opinion about them? I don't want to force you. I just try to perhaps wake you up a little bit after lunch.
Շնորհակալություն։ Իհարկե մեզ համար դա շատ լայն հնարավորություն էր։ Ես այցելել եմ եւ Չեխիայի Հանրապետություն եւ Ֆինլանդիա։
Of course, the management systems therein are quite different, but we have collected a lot of information from both countries, and we have acquired quite a wealth of experience. That is to say, the qualitative features that were available in those countries are a standard that we need to strive for. That is because, of course, we need to localize them and to make sure that whatever we saw is customized to our needs. However, I believe that the knowledge and the experience that our colleagues acquired in the study tours will be applied in their daily jobs. Thank you.
Thank you, Karen Agababyan. I wasn't participating in the study.
Այդ ուսումնական այցերին, ճանաչողական այցերին, բայց իմ գործընկերների հետ հաղորդակցվելով, նախարարության գործընկերների եւ ՀԿ-ների գործընկերների հետ համագործակցելով, կարող եմ վստահաբար ասել, որ այս այցերը շատ օգտակար եւ շատ արդյունավետ են եղել եւ որ մարդիկ տեսել են օրինակներ առայն թե ինչպես կարող են այլ լուծումներ գտնվել եւ դրանք անհրաժեշտ խթան են հանդիսացել մարդկանց համար, որպեսզի նրանք աշխատեն այդ ուղղությամբ։
Communication or comments. I know that NGOs in Armenia are very good and active in communicating the value of biodiversity in Armenia. Okay, we can continue, and I would like to ask already mentioned Tatevik Zuerker if she could explain the last component of the project that consisted of biodiversity conservation strategy.
Thank you. Thank you, Tomas. Even though David already mentioned that this fourth component of the project was not envisaged within the framework of the project, however, due to the savings and also based on the needs of the ministry, the twinning project was extended and the fourth component was added within the framework of which the biodiversity strategy and action plan was drafted. And I would like to extend my word of gratitude on my own behalf and the ministry's behalf for you becoming the impetus for and the stimulus for the start of this project. I would like to mention that the drafting process of the strategy has already been launched by the ministry, and this is both the strategy for environmental protection as well as the drafting of sectoral narrower strategies, including the strategy for the biodiversity preservation. The strategy drafting is stemming from the requirements of the Convention on the Preservation of biodiversity, and the global the biodiversity strategy has been approved, and every country has thereby obliged to either revise its own strategy or to align its strategies with the targets and the objectives of the global strategy. Very briefly, I should note that there are 4 main goals and 23 targets in the global strategy, which are to mitigate and minimize the adverse impact of changes on the environment, also to ensure that there is equal distribution of resources, and to ensure the integration of biodiversity assets and mainstream biodiversity in all policy making and program implementation issues. One of my colleagues already mentioned that one of the main targets was, if I am to try and identify those, the third target of global strategy, which is 30 by 30, that is to say by 2030 we need to maintain 30% of the maritime and land areas of the planet. And the next target is about the preservation and conservation of wildlife. And this document is especially focusing on the climate component. Within the framework of the twinning project, we will be seen as a cornerstone for the Ministry of the Environment for the drafting of the biodiversity strategies and action plans. And now I would like to give the floor to David, who will in further detail speak about the work that they have implemented.
So good afternoon, everybody, again. Thank you, Tatevik, for giving the intro to this component. I'll just follow with a few more words on how we went about, and I will not bore you to death with the details of the document. So the strategy and the action plan, how did we go about it? Well, 2 years ago, when we started the project, even before it crossed our minds that we could work on a biodiversity strategy here, Jindřich and I made a tour of many of you, and we had a structured questionnaire, and we did some structured interviews with many stakeholders in biodiversity. And one of the principal questions was, what do you perceive as the main threat to biodiversity? There were other questions that the answers helped us extremely well for when thinking about this document itself. We also had immense help from several academic institutions and NGOs with identifying the threats to biodiversity or to individual groups of organisms. Obviously, there was the previous national biodiversity strategy from 2016 to 2020 that we could take as an inspiration, and it also included a roadmap on how to go forward with the following strategy. So we looked at those documents that Armenia used in the past. We looked at the actual action plan, the last one, the last valid one. And we did an analysis of what was achieved from this action plan. In some areas, the results were quite fascinating. In some areas, there was not much progress done. But overall, we would say that about half of the points in the action plan were successfully implemented. With the first draft of the document, we asked several institutions again for providing their views and sometimes even drafting entire chapters, because in some fields we didn't have enough expertise on our team. Obviously, we worked with the post-2020 global biodiversity framework and tried to incorporate it. And so we came with the structure of the new strategy. We had a roundtable about 3 or 4 weeks ago here in Yerevan, and many of the people I see in the auditorium were present there. And again, thank you very much for very constructive discussion. It helped us immensely to improve the document, and we're still in the finalizing stages, and by the time this project ends, the final draft will be given to the ministry along with the translated version into Armenian language. I'll just briefly say the strategies, the structure of the new document is kind of obvious. We did an extensive descriptive and analytical part to identify the topics that need to be focused on. And then there is quite brief section of solutions. It's basically the proposals of what needs to be done in which area in the next 10 years. But these are broad, and from this solution part, the actual action plan valid for 5 years is given with concrete tasks with a concrete deadline. And we have several annexes apart from the literature. There's also this analytical table of threats to individual groups of organisms, etc. This is repetitive for those of you who've been at the roundtable last month. Just an overview of the main chapters of the solution part of the strategy. We hope to be able to give more details with the final draft very soon. And here I would thank you for your attention.
Any question towards the strategy? Yes, Alan. Can you talk to the microphone so? So the strategy will be done by the end of March, definitely. The final draft. The final draft, yeah.
After the roundtable, we received some more comments from several stakeholders, and we're still kind of trying to incorporate these things in it. And obviously, if we alter the version, the translation will have to follow this work. So we'll need a couple more days for this.
Շնորհակալություն, իմ հարցը հետևյալն է, եթե մենք ընդունում ենք global նպատակներ,
goals that are stipulated for the countries, including for the preservation of terrestrial and water lands up to 30%, and Armenia doesn't have a sea area, so in order to pursue this goal, we should have a double terrestrial area. And I know that in addition to biodiversity strategy, there is also a strategy for specially protected areas. Is it so or no? And how can we familiarize ourselves in more?
Well, the Czech Republic is also a landlocked. Oh, sorry. Thank you. The Czech Republic is also a landlocked country, and it is actually quite novel idea to double the percentage of the protected terrestrial land. We should maybe notice it to our own government. But in practice, nobody in Europe does this. I mean, the percentages are fixed for the terrestrial parts, even though the country doesn't have any sea. And the document will be possible. It will be available for download from the website that we've mentioned here. And there was another question. Oh, the targets, they are visibly mentioned in each of the points of the strategy of the solution part. So you will be available to look at the points and cross-refer from the 2030 target and from the biodiversity strategy.
Also, he was asking about alignment with protected areas.
To be sincere, because Voskap mentioned this other document, I don't have any information of how this is being developed, but clearly the biodiversity strategy has a part that deals with species and deals with protected areas, so there should be cross-links.
Twinning ծրագրի շրջանակներում առաջնահերթ խնդիրը կենսաբազմազանության ռազմավարության մշակման
the development of biodiversity strategy, taking into account the short period of time allocated for the project. But the strategy also has a block for PAs, but a separate strategy for PAs is obligatory, and for this we have a roadmap that has been developed. But for us, this one was of higher priority, taking into account that we have a global strategy under CBD, Convention on Biodiversity, and that is why, as of this moment, as of this stage, the development of biodiversity strategy was of higher importance, but it does not exclude the development of a separate strategy for specially protected nature areas, and we have a roadmap for this as well. And in the overall context of development of strategies, we're going to have this one as well. Որևէ այլ հարց կա? Կարեն, խնդրեմ։ Պարզապես մեկ հարց ունեմ։
We are missing action plan. I guess the team is already working on it. Would be nice to get it as well, to see and to go through it. Thank you. And thank you to the team for the great job. Thank you.
Well, thank you. Obviously, the action plan is worked on in lockstep, and will be available also as well within the end of the project.
Yes. I thought there would be a question.
I would like it to be clear, because there is a false opinion that this is about the development of the entire biodiversity strategy, but this is more of a guidance document. There was a roadmap, and the overall strategy for biodiversity as regards this issue, a more global activities necessary, because we had an agreement that this is going to be only about the targets and the risks, because otherwise a question arises. This document, as a result of this document, will it be translated to this government's decision or no? The proposal of the government for the twinning project was clear. The initial version, the draft version of the strategy was to be developed, and we have received this version, and this is acceptable for the ministry. But after this, we suppose that more profound activities will be held in order to come up with a government decision to supplement it and to have a more comprehensive strategic document. So I would like to stress once again that this document is the foundational document, the basis on which the strategy will be built. And the project has aimed to have a strategic document.
Thank you.
Շնորհակալություն. Որևէ այլ մեկնաբանություն կա?
Okay, if not.
Շատ լավ, եթե ոչ.
Thank you, David. And I would like to ask Ruzanna Grigoryan from the Ministry of Environment to tell us something about the future of international cooperation of the Armenian ministry or of Armenia as such. And we are getting to the part that is going to look at the future, although Jindřich will have some kind of performance before coffee break, so I think you will enjoy it.
Thank you. Dear colleagues, I didn't have a chance to be here from early morning. It started in the morning, so I would like to avail myself of this opportunity to thank the EU delegation to Armenia, to our Czech and Finnish partners, the consortium of which implemented this twinning project for 2 years, within the frames of which we are cooperating with each other very closely. First of all, I would like to mention that the launch of the project coincided with an important stage in Armenia, the launch of institutional and legislative reforms connected with SIPA, stemming from SIPA roadmap. And the Czech and Finnish consortium's activities were very important. In addition to the main outcomes of the project, there were proposals also about legislative and institutional reforms and the creation of the platform which enabled us in this important circle of making very important strategic reports, legislative reports, to create a platform which allowed us to combine the work of the academic research sectors and NGO sectors, and both the NGO representatives and other sectoral stakeholders had their input to develop these legislative initiatives. This was very important because it ensured a broad, inclusive process, and I am sure that the platform that was created within the frames of the twinning project will sustainably be applied in the future as well, because it has important aspects relating to awareness raising, information exchange, and we managed to pass this information to the regional administration bodies, NGOs, and so on. And this is an established mechanism that will be used in the future as well. I would like to stress that both with the Czech Republic and with Finland, more closer cooperation is with the Czech Republic, but we're trying to extend cooperation with Finland as well. And there are 3 memoranda, both intergovernmental and interdepartment, which is signed with the Czech Republic, and the cooperation exists and it is of continuous nature. And in particular, I would like to stress that as of now, there is mutual interest in cooperation for preventing wildfires and forest management. Information exchange on forest management shall be implemented, because both sides, both countries are interested in this, so we will have more tangible results in the near future as regards this cooperation. The next aspect, which within the frames of which some activities have started, is the cooperation for the inventory of whitefish, SYKE fish species, with our Czech partners, and in the future our cooperation will be extended and will yield more fruitful results, because we see that the European Union, particularly these 2 countries, have very successful experience, and we will try to localize this experience These efforts are highly appreciated by us. We also consider cooperation on climate change adaptation and management, water resources management, emissions, waste management, and once again we would like to extend our gratitude to our colleagues from the Twinning project, to the entire team, to the Czech and Finnish partners for their very tangible, very valuable input in sustainable management of the environment and making reforms in this respect. I would like to express hope that our international cooperation will not be limited to biological resources and PA management, but will be extended to overcoming other challenges of biodiversity and global environmental challenges. Thank you.
Okay, microphone. Yeah, they hear me now. Yes. Now the promised performance. I would like to ask Jindřich John to come up here and give us his personal thoughts that I think would be refreshing by itself. But then we will get a coffee break.
Thank you very much, Tomas, for this interesting introduction. It will be just presentation, no performance, so not that much of fun you can expect. But anyway, yeah. So once again, good afternoon. Ladies and gentlemen, dear colleagues and my dearest friends, I feel really honored to stay in front of you and to share my impressions from 2 years of my life in this wonderful country. So I call the presentation, the brief presentation, let's say Nature Conservation in Armenia, Strengths and Challenges. But it is from the perspective of RTA. So maybe you know RTA means Resident Twinning Advisor. In fact, it's a local coordinator, so my task, and I was, as you can see, the resident twinning advisor here in frame of this project, and my role actually was to identify the most important stakeholders and partners to understand the situation in nature conservation in Armenia, to provide feedback to my colleagues from our team, and to link our experts with Armenia experts when they were developing and when they were working on particular tasks of the project. So before I will share with you my impressions, I would like to provide very basic statistics about the project. So altogether we conducted more than 100 missions. Unfortunately, some of them were home-based. Not all 100 missions were undertaken in Armenia, but yeah, later on after the COVID restrictions were let's say abolished, then we started traveling quite a lot. So 475 official working days and many other not reported working days also were spent on when working on the project outcomes. And we can say that more than 90% of indicators have been achieved. So we are now we will draft or we will develop the final report. So we haven't analyzed yet the level of achievement of the project, but definitely we can also say that 105% of project indicators were achieved because we add a new component completely that it was not envisaged in the beginning of the project. And also the number of study visits to Czech Republic and Finland in the end was higher than originally expected. As David already mentioned, we conducted 22 interviews in spring 2021. to understand the situation in Armenia and to identify threats and pressures to biodiversity, challenges, and so on. And we, of course, have many other meetings and discussions, both formal and informal, directly in the field, as you can see. And of course, as we are not biologists and nature conservationists only by profession or by education, but also by heart, we couldn't hang around in Yerevan during weekends, for example, and or at least I did some approximately 100 field trips and we can say even expeditions all around Armenia. So that was really wonderful time, and I enjoyed it. And it was sometimes with help of different people. For example, with help of Alexander Malchazian from WWF. He opened the doors to some protected areas to me, and it was really wonderful. So, but still, I would like to talk about strengths or strong points and challenges of Armenian nature conservation from my personal perspectives, but some of them are clearly linked to strengths and challenges as identified in component 4 in National Biodiversity Strategy. So what is, I think, very, very important is that there are clear priorities in Armenia for what to protect. So you have a couple of umbrella species, like Persian leopard, Armenian mouflon, or bezoar goats, that when protecting those species, you protect entire environment and their habitats. So it is really great that it's absolutely clear what needs to be done, what's the focus both of protection and also monitoring. As you can see, the amount of camera traps in the field is really tremendous. So you have a lot of data on distribution and life of those really nice species. And there is many other strong points in Armenia's nature conservation. Out of them, I would like to mention, as my professional background is plant ecology and forest ecology, so long-term tradition of non-intervention regime in core areas of protected area of national parks, for example, or in state reserves. And structures like this, like you can see on the picture, are really critical, and it's typical result of long-term non-intervention approach to the management of forest in protected areas. And this creates also huge potential for scientific research, because you have really wonderful protected areas with very high natural values, and that needs to be monitored, and somehow the research needs to be really conducted there. For example, in Shikahok, it is extremely valuable protected area, and as we were told, there is no systematic monitoring or research being conducted there. So that's maybe challenge to the future. Yeah. And of course, strong role supporting the ministry, strong role of NGOs. That's what needs to be really highlighted and stressed. And it is really great to see here this cooperation of NGOs, of non-governmental sector and government. Yeah. So it's very easy to write down challenges, what needs to be done, of course, and I'm pretty sure that you know about it. So we are finishing now the project, but the real work needs to be started in coming months and years. So, and this will be job of the Ministry of Environment, of NGOs, and regional administrations of protected areas. So, what I would like again to stress, to understand, and it was a story also in Czech Republic and most probably in Finland, but maybe a bit earlier, to understand the disturbance regime, how it affects biodiversity and functioning of ecosystems in the different ecosystem, both non-forest and forest. I would like to talk for a while about it. And of course, fixing boundaries of protected areas, it's an issue, and developing system of capacity building and so on. And it's great that you are now launching the system of long-term biodiversity monitoring. So we can even put a tick on the second point. So that's great, and that's promising to the future. Yeah. So what is the disturbance regime? So sorry for this for these details in my presentation, but it's a topic I really like, and we are still trying to explain it also in our country, for example, to foresters, to our partners, why we need to keep the disturbance regime running in for example, in forests, because it creates so-called natural legacy in form of different gaps, openings, of course, deadwood. It's another topic, another issue that needs to be developed and worked on in the future. Yeah, so the non-intervention approach is the key precondition for this disturbance, for promoting disturbance regime and creating all those structures that are critical for other animals and plants and mosses, for example, except for leopard and bezoargos. These are also very, very important and critical for healthy ecosystems. And traditional human activities are also part of disturbance regime and are important precondition for biodiversity. So here you can see some some good examples of deadwood, how this deadwood, let's say, supports biodiversity. It's usually being said that, or it was identified that at least 1/3 of, and you know it very well, of all species living in forests are at least in certain part of their life cycle dependent on a deadwood. And this information is very well known in Armenia on the level of scientific institutions and on the level of the ministry, but when talking with people doing nature protection in regions, the level of knowledge, level of understanding of importance of these structures is really low. So this is one important thing that would be nice to be highlighted and should be as a topic for even for awareness raising activities towards people not only working in nature protection, because sometimes it's better to cut living trees in the same volume of some huge bulky log and to leave the log to be decomposed in the forest. So sometimes it's even better for biodiversity to cut living trees than removing dead wood from the forest. And also grazing is a long-term, it's a very traditional activity, not only in Armenia. I mean grazing in forest, not in grasslands, that's obvious, but in forest it is really important for specific group of organisms that needs those openings, gaps. It's not so very visible here, unfortunately, but I think you can imagine. And support promoting traditional activities like coppicing or pollarding. Another question are of course forest fires, and I was still thinking, comparing in my mind the forest after, especially juniper forest after fires in Armenia with experience I get in Northern America when I saw this. And yeah, the story is different, definitely. So definitely it seems that fire is not a natural disturbance typical for the juniper forest, because as you know, juniper forests have been evolving together with human and affected by human activities for centuries, even millennia. And now, if we stop grazing in those forests, the sensitivity to forest fires is rapidly increasing, and of course also with climate change. So even grazing can serve as a prevention of forest fires or wildfires in certain types of juniper forest. And of course, as a support for biodiversity, you can see Adonis volgensis in the left corner of the slide. And the question of grasslands, I will try to be short. Yesterday or today there is a seminar or important meeting about desertification, and of course the grazing pressure, especially in the lower parts of Armenia, is really critical for health and sustainability of using these semi-desert habitats. So everything is about human activities, human pressure to those, and would be really nice if we are talking about starting a biodiversity monitoring system that we can even include habitats monitoring, and we can even establish certain set of plots in this semi-desert, heavily grazed areas, for example, to fence them out and to see what's real impact of grazing, because without this, let's say, fencing or any kind of experiment like this, we cannot understand what's the real impact of grazing, or we can say even overgrazing in this lowlands, let's say, in Armenia. And on the other hand, there are quite large areas of not grazed grasslands, especially in remote areas, for example, in Bohakar area or in Dilijan. Yeah, of course, another set of challenges. It's really easy to talk about it, but I'm pretty sure that the first task, and I'm happy to see Roberta Lichanian representing Dilijan National Park, the most important and most critical is to address illegal activities, and this is really a challenge for Armenia. So we can talk, we can have seminars about the importance of deadwood, but if let's say illegal logging and cutting and removing of deadwood will still continue, then it will be just on the theoretical level only. And yeah, another challenge is to use coming projects and coming fundings to Armenia as efficiently as possible, and also for this would be great to establish, as it was already in detail described by our Finnish partners, any kind of intermediate agency to coordinate all those projects and to, let's say, to push donors and international teams like we are to produce really useful outcomes and recommendations and deliverables for Armenian nature protection. Okay, so I would like to express my great thanks first to Ruzanna. She was my counterpart, and she was always she always kept smiling when I entered to her office, and all the time asking for something. So thank you very much, Ruzanna. Thanks to other ministry people, Voskehat and Lucine. Thanks Anna Mirzoyan for great support of our team, of course, and it was great pleasure to work with such a team as David established. So thanks to David as a project leader. He was the head of this project who established it, and he asked me some 2.5 years ago if I would like to go to Armenia in case we can get this project. So that was wonderful time spent here in Armenia and many days outside, and yeah. So thanks a lot and good luck in protecting Armenia's wonderful nature. Thank you.
Thank you, Jindřich.
I wouldn't expect any questions.
I think there might be some questions. We wanted to give Jindřich a nickname, Deadwood, but it doesn't sound nice. So we could call him Cheering Forester, because he is always smiling, always very positive. So we were really glad that we could have him here in Armenia. Any questions or comments to what Jindřich said? It doesn't have to be about deadwood or anything like that, but yes, Karen.
Just, I would like to thank Jindřich for the great job he has done within the project, but also outside of the project, because we learned from his Facebook post that always in weekends he went to the mountain and to see animal nature, Armenian nature, animals, plants, etc. He was so devoted, and I am very proud that I got acquainted with Jindřich. Thank you very much. It's
Okay, Tatevik.
I would also like to thank you on behalf of Ministry. It was always nice to have you as a colleague working with us together, just sitting next to us. I think we were all a little bit disappointed that there was no performance, but maybe you can share some fun factors of these 2 years that you have been here, if you have any in mind. Thank you.
funny story.
Thank you. Fun stories. Maybe later on.
Maybe later on, yeah. There was a lot of them, of course.
Hendrik, we all loved you really very much. And I have a proposal to you, because we have a new position which is open. And you can consider it to stay in Armenia.